Okay, this was a dual task study. This was looking at, so dual task is kind of the new thing, right? Like if you test somebody on a single task, like just simply reaction time or just simply balance or just simply neurocognitive function, those tasks are fairly easy for us to do. And concussion may not affect us enough to show those differences. So the whole idea of dual task is if we get you to do two things or multiple things at once, we're gonna be able to pick up more subtle differences because that's harder for the brain to handle. So in a concussed state, you may see a widening of a difference between control and concussed. So this study here looked at 49 concussed youth versus 49 controls. The concussed group was all symptomatic and within 10 days from their injury. Outcome measures were symptom severity, the BESS, which is Balanced Area Scoring System, looking at them standing on a firm surface and on a foam pad. And then they did a dual task thing where they had two different cognitive tasks and two different balance positions. The two cognitive tasks were the visual spatial discrimination task and the PIT, which is the perceptual inhibition task. The two balance positions were on a force plate and they were on either a firm surface or a foam surface while standing on 2 feet. The dual task procedures, they stood on 2 feet with a controller in each hand. They had a screen that was 1.25 meters from their face, and they would have a square that would pop up on the screen either on the right or left side of the screen. And if it popped up on the left, they would click the left button. If it popped up on the right, they would click the right button. And they were standing and it was measuring their balance. And this went on, they did 10 in each direction. So they would have 20 stimulus events. They would be standing on either a foam pad, firm surface, on a force plate, and a square would pop up either on the right side or left side of the screen. And they would click on the button that corresponded to which side of the screen that this was on. Then the second task after that, they did this perceptual inhibition task where now instead of a square just popping up on one side of the screen or the other, an arrow would pop up on one side of the screen, and they had to click the button that corresponded to the direction of the arrow. So if an arrow pops up on the left side of the screen, but it's pointing right, they click the right button. So it's an incongruent task where now what they've just learned, they now have to kind of unlearn and go more for the arrow. So it just creates a congruent thing where you have, let's say, an arrow pointing left is on the left side of the screen. That's a congruent thing. Or they have an arrow pointing right on the left side of the screen. That's incongruent, right? Because their initial reaction may be to hit the left button or the right button or whatever. So they're supposed to do on the arrow pointing. So anyway, it's a really, really fancy test. The concussed group had significant differences in symptom severity scores. And then they had a couple differences in some of the postural sway measures, but really their cognitive tasks were the same as the controls. So no real difference in cognitive tasks. The authors speculated that maybe the cognitive task was a little bit too easy. We weren't able to, pick up any differences. Concussed group had higher sway values during the visual spatial discrimination task, and they had higher AP sway, anterior posterior sway on the firm and foam surfaces, higher medial lateral sway on the firm surface. They had during the inhibition task, they had higher anterior posterior sway on a firm surface and foam surface. So then they created a model to try and figure out how to differentiate concussion from control. Symptom severity score was in there, one of the best ways. So again, we don't need these tests to diagnose concussion. If somebody comes in after a hit and has symptoms, generally that's all you need. You don't need to do all this fancy stuff.